comments you want to make? I guess.
About.
I thought you were introducing this.
I am. I will. As it stands right now, the plan is that I will introduce the group on stage. The seating assignments that you've seen come out is to try and facilitate the mic moving down the line. And hopefully, Mark, when you get handed the mic, Gene gets handed the mic. And so that's the logic behind that. At that point in time, then, I'll briefly pull up the slide on the outline of the presentation, go through it, and then we will turn it to Sally to discuss the process that was went through to adopt the Common Core. I think it's huge positive that we have Leanne involved because she was on the state committee. And if Sally doesn't acknowledge that as she goes through hers, I'm going to make sure that I do at some point in time. Because I think it's important to know that one of the misconceptions that keeps coming up is the lack of local involvement. Well, here's the personal first-hand experience that was involved from the get-go, from the start. And I think that's huge in my opinion.
Move that slide up, please, to Sally's group. That's that. Okay.
Yes. I would hope Sally would recognize, you know, your presence there and your involvement.
I don't think she knows. I haven't told her.
You're too bashful to tell her I sure will. So,
Definitely something to tout. For our whole involvement in this presentation, I think that needs to be made clear.
well, and again, I think as you and Gene addressed the misconceptions, that right there points to the fact that it's, you know, the local involvement has been there since the beginning.
Yeah, there's a slide there, and we'll be sure to bring that up at the equipment time.
And just to be more specific, what we're referring to there is the executive review committee, correct?
Yeah.
That's
English language arts. Right.
You guys want me to run this, or?
Yeah, I'm wondering, okay, Tom, are you done with your part? You know, or how are we
No, we
gonna
haven't
actually
started
reverse
ours.
this?
Yeah, we haven't started ours because right now Sally's talking.
Okay.
And we're hoping Sally keeps hers to 10 minutes. But at that point in time, we move into the current reality, which Alex and I will go through. And I think it's important to note that the schools have not failed. And the statewide assessment results demonstrate that. And jump in at any point in time.
Well, the growing gap, well, some of the problems that we see is that the problem lies in the fact that our world is changing faster than our educational system. And with things like technology, financial, globalization, demographics, so the growing gap is getting bigger and bigger. Our education system will have to evolve in order to prepare students for the changing world that they have to live and work in. We have to look ahead and close this gap. And then it brings us to the new reality. The world is no longer the safe, stable, and predictable place that it once was, and as a result, there are ever-increasing and incredible changes on our nation's future horizon. That should bring up the questions, what impact will this changing world have on our education? How can schools prepare for, our youth for these realities? How do we provide the essential skills and empowerment they need to be contributors in solving important world and community problems?
I think at this point in time, I'll probably make a comment to the audience stating, in your positions out there think back to how what is demanded of you is different than, in my case, I started working in 1981. And how the ability to access and find information is much more critical than the ability to know information. And thereby leads to the reasoning part of why college and career ready is so important.
What about the Bill Gates Foundation thing you mentioned there?
This is have you-
This is the first slide here. I guess my question is what's your question? What about?
Well, I mean, that's such a solid point. There's, Bill Gates Foundation is tied up in some other issues and conversations about Common Core, but fundamentally, that's why I think it'll be important to stress this fact that Gates Foundation and many others are really trying to promote and support an education process that recognizes that statement there in the salary differential between young people that learn how to think on their own versus those that didn't learn that. And so part of this is really looking at the future of those students and preparing them not only for college, but also for career and be successful in that environment. So that, I think, is important. The Gates Foundation and others support this process because of that reality and the opportunities in the future for our young people.
But I think the key point is the and others. Based off of what I've been reading from going from the Americans for Prosperity going around with their thing, I think it would be great, and I know I do this, as a lawyer, I don't just cite one case when I can cite 10. If we've got another organization or something or some other data to support this statement, I think it would be beneficial to help contradict that misconception that Bill Gates is behind the Common Core, to say not only the Bill Gates Foundation, but also XYZ Foundation says.
Okay, the question is, when we have this point, can we say, and then the Bill Gates Foundation, the ABCY group, the whatever, believe in this so strongly, they have invested a financial interest in it. I guess where I'm going is,
Doesn't everybody know that? That's gonna be there for the most part? That they financially supported this?
I would say, the ones that have done the research, yes, the ones that probably haven't investigated Common Core or college and career ready as much, no.
There's that two, so in our discussions here, there are 2 points to that second bullet. One is, in this particular case, the Gates Foundation released information specifically on the salary gap. And that's quotable and notable. But the other issue we're bringing up here is that it's not just the Gates Foundation that supports Common Core approaches, but many others.
Does the section of misconceptions kind of answer that?
There's some that touches on that. I guess I wanted to also bring up on that second bullet, it's not just the difference between high and low critical thinking type positions, but many positions now, even though they might pay a low amount, they still require the employee to be a critical thinker. I mean, when you think of it, just operating a cash register now can be complicated if you look at some of the, from their side of what it looks like. I remember when Walmart allowed you to check out your own groceries. They've stopped doing that now, but it wasn't as easy as it looked. And so even jobs which we would think of as not requiring a lot of thinking skills are moving in that technology direction. So I think, that's going to be the future for our students. Many jobs which were not I don't have, the research to back that up, except I think I see that all around me, in the things that I do every day, go to stores and
Well, I think,
service departments and automotive,
I
it's
think
all
verbally,
complicated.
we can tie that between this previous slide and this slide in the comments that Alex and I are making, that all positions, regardless of the level, are gonna continue to require more and a higher level of critical thinking as we move forward into the future. And that's what makes college and career ready standards so vital, is because that's part of the process, if you will, that we work through with the students, is how to develop that skill and talent.
You can consider another bullet there, because the next slide, I think, goes into some sort of common frontline options for our young folks.
Figure it together.
Actually, I think about the military thing, but that's, I don't see.
You had some comments written down. Did you cover the comments?
The 70% one?
No, we will talk before we got to 7%.
No, not the last slide, it's just kind of what we talked about in Bill.
Can you, Ned, can you give us the information on the others besides the Gates Foundation and the financial?
We'll look that up.
Yeah, I know what.
Can somebody write that down for me?
I guess the question on that would be, really that statement just saying that the foundation released information.
Right.
It's not saying they supported Common Core. You start putting the Bill Gates Foundation and others, or ABC, and then someone might say, well, so did, someone might throw
Leave
out,
somebody
well,
out.
didn't Ford Automotive do something too? I mean, the statement's just saying the foundation released information, that's all it's saying.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the way I look at it, as opposed to add the bullet point, if we just address it by simply saying, the Bill Gates Foundation, the ABC-wide, believe so much that they've committed financial resources to this process, and then move on to the 70%. I don't think we need to have a big discussion about who's putting the money in, but
And I
if
guess,
we believe that there's a perception that Bill Gates is forcing this through on the U.S., then I guess it's kind of a table setting for Gene and Mark's discussion of the misconceptions. We can make that comment.
Yeah, there's a lot of reading in between the lines on that. The Bill Gates Foundation released information this fall back. Has nothing to do with about any contributing money. So that's gonna be an underlying comment that somebody's probably gonna add to us after our presentation, or leave it up to Gene and Mark to answer it.
Well, I think Gene and Mark will address it more
I hope
strongly.
so. I do see this as important, but I mean, I think it's helpful to know that various organizations are doing research in that area, but I think the objection is that those organizations that are doing that research are skewing their results. And so, I think having additional organizations which maybe have similar findings, or maybe, let's find out what they say and present, that information, because then it isn't, it's more across the board. If they're, if you want to add that, or you can just speak to that too, it doesn't necessarily have to be written on the slide.
I mean, time's critical on the presentation, so why add more information? Because if I'm out in the audience, I really don't care who's funding it. I want to know, why is the Common Core important? Bill Gates, so what? He has millions and millions of dollars. That's probably why he's funding part of it, is what I'm going to be thinking personally.
And in some ways, that's a common I don't know if you could say it comes out to $100,000, but I'm sure there is some significant amount between those types of positions, whatever it is, so.
We heard last week with the Americans for Prosperity, that Bill Gates donated $150-some million to the common poor. They saw that as a negative. I don't know, but I see that as a negative. You know, Timmy, you make a point there that he's benevolent, he's wanting to see education. Maybe he's just in his stance of contributing funds to the college and career readiness standards because he believes that they're going to prepare kids to be college and career ready. I don't know of any sinister motive why he did that. And I don't know how much time you want to spend refuting it in your presentation.
I'm okay with that also.
But it certainly was something that was dwelled upon with the Americans for Prosperity presentation that we heard last week.
I mean, in the interest of keeping it clean, maybe the best strategy would be to let however we address it be addressed under the misconceptions part of this topic, and keep this more focused again on what the current reality is, and not worry about the financial part of it during our part.
Well, you could almost say that, the difference between high and low critical thinking jobs in the future, there are going to be more high thinking type jobs, and in fact, that is, the Bill Gates Foundation found that there was even a salary differential, a significant one, between those types of jobs. So not only are more jobs in the future going to require higher level thinking, but there will be a salary more commensurate with that, too.
Can I throw something here? The Bureau of Labor Statistics has a lot of good stuff on job growth, and I'm sure if you want some supporting information to what you had on the slide, that we can find something for you there. But just doing a little research here, Gates and Warren Buffett are the two leading philanthropists in the country, and they've each donated about 3 times what any other philanthropist has donated, both in the neighborhood of $30 billion. And Gates's areas have been education, AIDS prevention throughout the world, and sanitation. I mean, you don't have to do much research about these folks, and you can find out the kind of things that they've contributed to. So, fairly reasonable causes, I would say.
Moving on to the military slide up. You start.
70% is ineligible for the military. Like high school diploma and GED does not count. Not pass basic literacy test. Obesity, drugs, and incarceration.
And this number's growing. And we're gonna pay for them in one form or the other if we do not prepare them for the future.
Well, I think it's important in terms of the military. When I was a teenager, that is where the students who were in trouble, the judge would send them into the military rather than sending them to jail. Or the students that really, dropped out and couldn't do anything else, but they went in the military. That used to be sort of almost the backup plan or where people would go. But now we're seeing that even the military has raised their standards and really is not able to accept students who don't have these greater skills. So I think that's why it's important. It's not just that the military is another employer, it's that was sort of the employer of last resort for a while. those areas of last resort anymore. They've gone offshore, they've gone to other countries. We are a technological nation.
Just a point of reference on this, on 70% slide come from, in a speech that Condoleezza Rice presented as Secretary of State. So she has a pretty good knowledge in her position, and she was serving as Secretary of State. 70% of our students will not qualify for the military for those reasons that are listed there. And that's kind of a scary number, particularly when you look at this increase in 1% a year.
I guess I'll, Leanne, you and Renee, I'm struggling with a way to present this slide.
This one?
Yes.
89% of high school teachers believe that they send their kids off to college prepared. 26% of college instructors think their kids are ready to learn. Is that how you would interpret it, Renee? Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Just simply a different perception in how high school teachers, they see their job versus how college instructors see their job and how good a job they're doing and how well the kids are coming through it.
That was a ACT survey, when? No?
I do not know when.
That's from 2012.
Which is the last stuff that they got last.
Good. You know, conclude with, today is the new starting point. We've got to go forward from here, and I guess my comment would be on the next slide, Bill Baggett's quote is, if you want results to change, you can't keep doing the same thing. I don't think you always have to define insanity by that. I get it other ways.
Well, no, but.
And with that, we turn the ball over to Gene and Mark.
Common misconceptions, important thing to talk about. We moved that into the first part of this presentation. And so to review a couple of those that are out there, a common misconception, adopting common standards will bring all state standards down to the lowest common denominator, which means states with high standards will be taking a step backwards. That's a misconception. Jean, what do you think about that?
Well, next slide, please. There is actually an agreement that no state will lower its standards, and even the highest performing states will be moving to the next level. This really is needed because many students who are graduating and passing all of their required tests, even in those higher performing states, still require remediation when they get to college. These standards represent the best in current thinking in our nation and are the highest levels of international standards. These are educational outcomes that our students need to have in order to be prepared for college and career. Turn this one. Well, yes. It is adopting these standards will not bring states down to the lowest common denominator. Another common misperception is that the standards will only include skills and don't address the importance of content knowledge.
You know, Gene, I think the reality there is, in the working, as I understand it, with the implementation of these standards, is that standards recognize that both content and skills are important. Standards set a rigorous definition of college and career readiness, ensuring students develop depth in their understanding and ability. In other words, learn how to think for themselves. What do you do when you don't know what to do? For example, in English language arts, the standards require some content for all students, such as American literature, founding documents, Shakespeare. Additional content is determined at the state and local level. It's that collaboration and implementation. The standards also require students to become knowledgeable in literature and other areas through reading, writing, speaking, and listening. In mathematics, the standards set forth a solid foundation in basic math concepts, such as whole numbers, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, fraction, decimals, which are necessary to support a student's ability to understand more demanding math concepts. Middle school and high school standards require students to apply mathematical thinking in real-world issues, sort of the story problem, and challenges, and prepare the student to think through, and reason mathematically as college students and employees of every day. Another common misconception, Gene, key math topics are missing or appear in the wrong grade.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Mark. Oh, my.
Well, this is like.
And you think me and Tom are gonna be working with this?
The standards do set forth mathematical progressions that are coherent, are evidence-based, and do lead to college and career readiness at an internationally competitive level, which is exactly what we want for our students. You have to also understand, though, that there may be some minor adjustments that are needed in various grade levels, as the different math concepts in all states may have been taught at slightly different times during in the grade sequence. So there might be minor adjustments that are needed. Another common misperception, Mark, is that no teachers were involved in writing the standards.
Yeah, it's a perception, it's a concept, it's part of the buzz out there. The fact is, teachers and education experts from many states across the nation worked together and were instrumental in drafting the standards. The process of drafting the standards were intensive, transparent, and reflected the input and professional expertise of many state education authorities. It's just not true, Gene, that's where I was going. It's just not true that these standards were written by folks outside of the classroom. In fact, we had staff that participated in the Kansas conversation, and yeah, are we going to have that handout? I'd like to reference that.
Your pictures on.
But they might also say, yeah, but look at her, she's at central office. I was one of the few, most of them were teachers.
Most of them were teachers?
Most of them were.
Okay, well, teachers and administrators. And so even from Garden City, through Leanne, we were represented in that conversation of implementation, together with a number of other teachers. And I'm wondering whether it wouldn't be appropriate to put in a quick flash on the next slide, of that factual list. The ELA Executive Committee members is an example.
I mean, Sally references that in her
Yeah.
second slides.
We're talking visuals here, because
Yeah.
we're talking a lot. I'm wondering whether putting that, for example, put it at the bottom there, or zoom it in as the next slide. But specific people on that specific initiative, I think is just ideal to reference that, that fallacy. That, and move on. Another misconception. The standards tell teachers what to teach. It binds their hands sometimes.
Not so, Mark. The standards are not a curriculum. They're a clear set of goals and expectations for knowledge, for the knowledge and skills that are needed to help our students succeed. The local teachers and administrators will decide how the standards are to be met, and teachers will continue to do lesson plans and tailor their instructions to meet each individual student's needs. So the teachers will still be determining what to teach. They'll just have some goals and expectations in order to do that.
Gene, couldn't you really characterize this as a freedom to teach setting?
just seems like that would then flow well with, this is how we're going to teach.
Yeah.
That's a very good point.
I agree.
Somebody writing all this down.
Sure.
Just move this. Okay.
Sorry for interrupting.
Oh, that's good.
I don't know if it'll throw off our.
Oh, they'll
That's
still
all right.
have it.
I was gonna ask you how long he's on married.
Mark, another common misperception is that the standards will be implemented through No Child Left Behind, signifying that the federal government will be leading them.
The fact is, Gene, Standards Initiative is state-led and not part of No Child Left Behind. Adoption of the standards is not mandatory. It's an option, and 45 states have taken that option. Standards are state-driven, not federally driven, and states began working together to create clear, concise standards before the Recovery Act or the Elementary and Secondary Education Act guidance was released. This has been a work in progress for a number of years. The National Governors Association Center and the Council for Chief State and School Officers are developing a state policymaker guide to implementation to provide support to state implementation and collaboration efforts between states and education publishers, kind of the thing that would normally, you would expect to happen as a big, broad initiative like this is undertaken in multiple states. Another misconception, Gene, the federal government will take over ownership of the standards initiative and basically local control has been lost.
That's very much like the prior one. Did you want to try to consolidate those at all? Or?
You can either consolidate or just make it as two
As
like
a
they are
follow-on to
to
that.
emphasize.
Okay. As you were saying, the federal government will not govern or oversee the Standards Initiative. The standards was and is and will remain a state-led effort. The National Governors Association and the Council for Chief State School Officers are committed to developing a long-term governance structure with leadership from state policymakers and state leaders. So it is state-led. And in keeping with Laura's idea, I'm going to flip back to, finally, there is another common misperception that the standards will tell teachers what to teach.
Now, and as you so articulated earlier, what you said.
So the standards are not a curriculum, they're a clear set of goals and expectations.
Yeah,
Teachers
it's a
will,
freedom.
Freedom to
teach
teach.
in the classroom.
and then we move into,
Okay, the next portion of our presentation includes the educator's plan of action. College and career readiness. We want all students to be college and career ready. College is a means to an end and not the end. There is no finish line when it comes to education and learning. Career ready means that the student has a foundation for being a successful member of society. And to do so, they've got to have good decision-making ability, they need to show initiative and creativity, they need to be results-driven in regards to goal setting as well as decision-making and working with others and multitasking. Currently, reading level requirements are higher for the military and entry-level occupations than for college literature courses. So a student without any secondary education may not be eligible for a significant number of careers. The bar has been raised, as we mentioned earlier, and it's our responsibility to get students equipped and ready for whatever they want to do. For example, the curriculum is not in an infantile process anymore. It's been developed in our district to the point where we have, for example, English language arts and the literacy standards roadmap, which includes 4 strands, which you see on the top of each column there: reading, writing, speech and listening, and language. For each strand, there are anchor standards. For example, I have a booklet, and you'd be able to pass this around. But for our district, under English Language Arts, you can go to, for example, kindergarten, and you can see the 4 strands. The reading standards for literature, and there's 10 anchor standards that are associated with that for just the kindergarten level. We also have the writing standards with 10 anchor standards associated with this strand. We also have speaking and listening and language standards, and we have this curriculum drawn out for kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, all the way through 12th grade. So this curriculum is well developed and ready to be implemented in our district. Which takes us to the key. Yeah.
There's one thing that you want to make sure that the things that you have on the papers are the standards. The curriculum is what we will do here at Garden City to teach those standards.
Okay, thank you.
So you want to make sure that's clear, because curriculum is local based. But the standards are the umbrella under which all that stuff that we'll do will be.
It's really an ideal opportunity to emphasize how the standards are there, but the implementation is local.
Right.
Here's
Yes.
what we've got, USD 4%.
Yeah.
So each district